At 2:00 a.m. on September 12, 2025, silence over the Baltic Sea shattered. A swarm of 221 Ukrainian drones thundered toward Russia's Primorsk oil port, the Kremlin's golden goose, pumping over 1 million barrels of crude every single day and generating more than $41 million in revenue daily. For Russia, Primorsk wasn't just an oil hub, it was a lifeline. For Ukraine, it was the ultimate target. This was not just an attack. It was Ukraine's boldest operation to date, a strike designed to cripple Russia's economy, humiliate its defenses, and prove to the world that nowhere, not even hundreds of miles from the front lines, was safe. The strike force was unlike anything Russia had ever faced. Leading the charge were the Lifeline drones, long-range predators carrying 220-pound warheads and capable of flying nearly 1,000 miles. Then came the Palanisha, the heavy hitters, each armed with 440 pounds of explosive fury. Finally, the most numerous and versatile of the swarm, the Beaver drones. They were cheap, agile, and deadly, each costing under $100,000, yet carrying jam-proof navigation systems that made them almost impossible to disrupt. Together, they represented a revolution in battlefield economics. Plywood, consumer-grade chips, and artificial intelligence combined into a weapon powerful enough to challenge Russia's billion-dollar defenses. In Kiev, inside a dimly lit SBU control room, operators stared at walls of flickering monitors. Through the thermal feed of the lead drone, Primorsk port glowed like a beacon, a vital artery of Russian oil wealth, shipping 1 million barrels of crude a day and hundreds of thousands of barrels of diesel. The mission was clear: sever the pumping stations and loading terminals, destroy the port's nervous system, and create maximum economic damage with minimum collateral losses. Hours earlier, under a false flag in the Black Sea, a disguised commercial vessel had launched the swarm. But instead of charging straight toward Russia, the drones embarked on a carefully plotted detour, hugging NATO coastlines on a flanking route that took months of intelligence work to prepare. Ukrainian analysts had mapped every radar blind spot, every patrol schedule, and even modeled sea conditions to predict the quietest windows for passage. This wasn't just brute force, it was a symphony of strategy. As Russian patrols scanned the waters, the drones unveiled their first trick. Guided by AI, they dipped just above the waves, skimming silently at 3 feet altitude. Every 30 seconds they submerged into the sea clutter, their snorkel masts rising for only 15 seconds to grab a GPS fix and exchange data before vanishing again. On Russian radar, they weren't drones at all. They were nothing but restless waves on a choppy night. At 1:30 a.m., a dozen beavers split off from the main formation. They launched decoy flares, creating phantom signatures that drew Russian patrol boats away from the real threat. The bait worked. Russian crews changed course to chase ghost ships, leaving the heavy strike drones to continue their deadly journey undetected. But Primorsk was no ordinary target. Guarding it was a fortress of layered defenses worth billions. Buck M3s designed to shoot down jets from 40 miles away, Panzer S-1s that could unleash missiles and 5,000 bullets per minute, Tor M2s capable of tracking swarms, and the infamous Krasika 4, an electronic warfare system designed to fry the circuits of incoming weapons. On paper, it was impenetrable. In reality, every one of these systems was looking in the wrong direction. They were programmed to ignore low-altitude sea clutter, and Ukraine was exploiting that blind spot with devastating precision. At 1:52 a.m., chaos erupted inside Russian command posts. Operator consoles lit up with fleeting blips, targets appearing for 2 seconds, then vanishing before locks could be achieved. It was the birth of Ukraine's ghost swarm tactic. Hundreds of Beaver drones played decoys, rising just high enough to trigger radar before diving back into wave cover. Russia's billion-dollar defenses were left swatting at shadows. Frustrated, the Russians activated their ace, the Krasika 4 jammer, pumping out raw electronic power that could black out cell phones from hundreds of miles away. To them, the swarm was blind. But this was Ukraine's trap all along. In those final minutes, the drones went completely dark, switching to fully autonomous AI guidance. Each carried a $5,000 chip with one mission: pattern recognition. With this, the drones executed perfect evasive maneuvers, dodging missiles with machine precision. Russian operators panicked. Over comms, desperate voices screamed, "It's dodging! How is it dodging?" They had no idea that their most advanced jamming bubble had just handed Ukraine the advantage. At 2:01 a.m., Russia scored what seemed like a victory. A missile-obliterated Beaver drone number 28. But instead of disappearing, it erupted into a thermobaric fireball. This was no accident. Some Beavers had been rigged with secondary charges to blind Russian thermal sensors. One by one, more drones were destroyed, and each death became another blinding flash across Russian defenses. Suddenly, every screen inside Primorsk's command center was flooded with white static. The defenders were blind, and through that chaos, the heavy hitters surged forward. At 2:02 a.m., the sky over Primorsk ignited. The first wave of Liudi and Palanisha drones smashed into the port's critical systems. Pumping stations were torn apart, substations obliterated, control centers vaporized. Lights didn't just flicker, they died. Pumps didn't just stop, they shattered. The second wave followed, hammering the tankers themselves. Shaped charges pierced steel hulls like paper, igniting hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil and diesel. Fire spread across the facility in seconds, fueled by ruptured pipelines and collapsing infrastructure. The port's fire suppression systems, knocked offline by earlier strikes, never had a chance to respond. Within 90 seconds, Primorsk was no longer an oil hub. It was a roaring inferno. Russia's most valuable economic artery had been severed in the span of a single breath. The aftermath was staggering. Russia managed to shoot down 28 drones, but all of them were expendable decoys. More than 50 heavy payload drones struck their targets with devastating precision. The result? Over $100 million in immediate losses, nearly $1 billion in rebuild costs, and the annihilation of $41 million in daily revenue. Global oil markets shuddered, prices spiking 2% overnight. For Russia, it was a strategic disaster. For Ukraine, it was a masterclass in modern warfare. A swarm of low-cost drones, plywood frames, diesel engines, consumer electronics, and brilliant AI software had outsmarted and overwhelmed some of the most advanced defenses on Earth. The lesson of Primorsk is clear. Russia believed thicker walls, stronger shields, and expensive systems could guarantee safety. Ukraine never tried to break the wall. They flowed beneath it like water, exploiting cracks their enemy didn't even know existed. And in the 21st century, victory doesn't belong to the side with the biggest sword. It belongs to the side with the sharpest brain. So the question now is simple. What comes next for Ukraine's ghost swarm? Will we see drones that can hunt submarines, swarms that can carry torpedoes, or weapons that make even today's systems obsolete? One thing is certain, the war of drones has only just begun.